Okay, so this tutorial is going to show you how to make this image, and we're going to use quite a few techniques that you'll use a lot for your coursework. We're going to cover doing layer masks, and we're going to cover adjustment layers, and these are two things that you're going to use a lot of. So to start with, download from My City this image, Picnic. You're not really going to touch this image, but it's, handy to have it open anyway. And then you're going to open the camera image, and this is what we're going to do most of the work on. So what we're going to do is we're basically going to cut out this camera, we're going to mask out the background, and then we're going to adjust it color wise so it matches the background. So we don't need all this, right? So what we're going to do first is we're going to crop it. Normally you work non-destructively, but in this case we don't need all this bloody background stuff, we just need the camera. So crop tool up here, and it's exactly the same as you might have done on your phone. You're just moving the border around the camera like so, and when you're done, push enter. And then what we're going to do is we're going to mask out the background. Now this might be easier to do on the actual Picnic background, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab it, I'm going to grab this image, drag it up, and then drop it there. Now that's obviously massive, but that's not too bad because we can just resize it later. And what we're going to do now is we're going to add a layer mask first of all. So to add a layer mask, you can either go down here and push mask, or you can go up to layer, layer mask, and pick reveal all, or you could do hide all, but if you do hide all, it means you won't see anything. It'll make life a bit more difficult. So do reveal all, and you'll see the mask layer appear here. So what we're going to do is we're just going to paint out the border of this. Now you can use any of the tools you want. I'm going to try and make my life easier. I'm going to see how well the magnetic lasso tool does. So I've gone over these selection tools. There's a video about it as well if you want to check. But this one, I'm thinking because there's quite a lot of contrast between the camera and the background, this is going to work alright. Well, clearly that's already getting a bit confused. Hopefully it'll work a bit better down here. And remember, I can always go back and adjust this afterwards, which I will do. So I'm just going to draw right around this. It doesn't matter if it's a wee bit rough just now. We'll just get most of it in. It's doing a pretty decent job of it. As good as you can hope for, really. I'm going to come down here and come up and finish it off. So we've got that. Now there's clearly bits that we need to add in to mask out the camera. So what I'm going to do is zoom in just so I can get a good view of that. And then I like to do things by hand. You could use your selection tool. You could potentially use magic wands. Maybe worth playing around and seeing what ones work. But I like doing things by hand. So I'm just going to use the lasso tool. I'm going to hold shift. You'll see the icon changes to a wee plus sign. So I'm just going to use that to manually trace around the bits I want to add. So by encircling that, I'm adding that whole bit. I could then refine that even further, like so. I'm going to take away this part, so you hold Alt, and it makes it negative. So I can come down and trace that. Like so. And then Shift again. Here. And then Shift to add that bit. Oh, made a wee bit of an error there. Let's fix that. This might be easier if you're using a graphics tablet. I'm using a mouse because my graphics tablet is acting a bit funny. So this whole bit here is a bit wobbly, but it's a nice straight line in it. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to change this to the polygonal lasso tool. I'm going to hold Shift. I'm going to draw a nice straight line right across there, around the corner, and then down, and then down. We just add all that in. There, yeah. So I need to cut out this bit at the top. So I'm going to use, again, I'm just going to use the polygonal tool, Alt, to cut out that bit. So I think I'm missing a bit there. It's actually quite hard to see, isn't it? Oh, Alt to just trim that right across there. The camera image, once it's resized, is going to be quite small, so I guess it probably doesn't matter too much. There's a couple of wee bits missing. This is really just about getting used to the tools. So I'm going to go back to my lasso tool. I'm going to hold Shift. I'm going to select around that curvy bit there. And then I'm going to go down. I might just use the polygonal lasso tool again to draw that out. Press the wrong button. I should be holding Alt. Oops, so Control Z, and go back, and I'll hold Alt, and then I'm going to cut out anything that's sticking out the side there. That's nice and straight. And then I'm going to add this bit in here. Probably get away with polygon tool again. Oopsie. Oh yeah. And then I've got this bit here. I'm nearly done. Holding Shift to add to the selection. And then again, holding Shift to add to the selection. See, I'm doing it all in little tiny bits. Just the way I like to do it, I feel it gives you a bit more control over everything, rather than trying to do it all in a oneer. And then I'm going to go to the final part around here. I'm going to use Alt and the polygon tool. I should maybe have just used the polygon tool right away. The magnetic tool is great in theory, but it's sometimes gives you a bit raggedy. I mean, there are other methods to smooth these out, but for the time being, I just want you to get used to doing things by hand. That'll do. A bit of a weird bit here. So I'll just use my freehand tool to do that and remove this. So you don't have to select it. I mean, you could just paint around it. But by doing it this way, it means you're kind of getting full control before you actually do anything to it. So I've got the camera selected that I want to keep. I'm going to invert my selection. So I'm going to hold Control Shift I, and you'll see that it's now selecting everything around the camera. You've got your, we call this a dotted line marching ants. You can also do that by going to Select Inverse. It's one of the few hotkeys that I use because I use it quite a lot. And then I'm going to just paint out here. So I'm on my mask layer, and I've got black selected. So remember, black is 0 visibility, 0 value. White is 1. So by painting over this background, you're going to remove just the background and not the bits you've got selected. I'm going to make my brush bigger, so that's doesn't take quite so long. And then I've got my camera masked out, so I can just select, deselect that. You could save that selection for later. I don't think I'm going to bother. And then I'm going to scale it up. So I'm going to go with my camera layer. I'm going to go to Edit, either Transform Scale or just Free Transform. I pretty much always just use Free Transform. And I'm just going to scale the camera to the size I want it to be, which is about that size. Maybe a bit smaller. I can work it out later. That'll do for now. Now you see the camera looks much clearer than the background here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some adjustment layers to try and make the color balance match a bit more what's in the background. So you can either click this wee button here, which is Add Adjustment Layer, or you can go to Layer, New Adjustment Layer, and I'm going to pick curves to start with. It might be worth playing around. I'm going to click here, Use Previous Layer to create clipping mask. That means it won't affect the layer in the background. Or remember, there's this wee button here. You can push that. If you've gone this route and opened it here, you just push that wee button and it'll do exactly the same thing. So I'm just going to adjust the curves here. like so. Make that a bit more in shadow. It's a wee bit clear looking, I think. So I'm going to add a blur, right? So I'm going to go to my filters. You could use the blur tool, which is here. So the wee teardrop looking thing. So I'm going to do that actually, rather than using the filter. So I'm just going to go back to this layer here. I'm just going to blur that out slightly. A bit more. You see, it's really subtle. That's maybe a bit too much, but you know what, it's okay. And then what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to change the colour, because the colour of the light here looks different from the colour here. So I'm going to add another adjustment layer. I'll do it this way now. And I'm going to change my hue, I think. And then push this wee button here so it's only affecting the layer below. And then I'm just going to change the colour so it's a bit warmer. Let's see, that's a bit colder, maybe there. Yeah, I think about there looks about right. Now you see, it looks really stuck on. So this is where I'm going to do some hand painting. So I'm going to make a new layer. Layer, new layer. I'll call this shadow. And then I'm just going to put that layer underneath the camera. Because what I'm going to do is paint a shadow in using my paintbrush. So you get your paintbrush tool. I'm just going to use black just now. I'm going to make it a bit smaller because it's a bit extreme just now. I'm just going to really subtly paint in a wee bit of shadow underneath the camera. Like that. There'll be a wee bit more there, I think. Now, if that's too extreme, you can go and adjust the opacity of that layer to make it more or less extreme. I think that's probably about right. Depending on where it is, I might want to mask out parts of it to look like the background is coming over the top of it. But I'll let you figure that out yourselves. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a wee bit of shadow on the front here. So I'm going to let's go to layer, new, whoops, layer, new, layer. And I'll call this, I don't know, reflection dim, because that's basically what I'm going to do. And I'm going to put, oh, you're so slow, why are you being so slow? There you go. I'm going to put reflection dim above all the other layers here. So it's not, so it's going to sit on top of everything else. And again, I'm just going to use my paintbrush to just paint in where I think the shadows would be. So there'll be more shadow here. The light in this source is coming from here, coming down. So all this is going to be a bit more in shadow. So I'm just going to paint them in pretty starkly at first. All around. I want that there, maybe. I think there would be some highlights left on the top there, maybe around the side. Now that's pretty extreme. So again, I'm just going to go to my opacity and just dim that down a wee bit. Like so. And there you go. So obviously there's way more time we could spend on this, so it might be worthwhile just experimenting with the different adjustment layers, maybe adjusting the mask if you want to go and start cutting things out, and maybe you want to look like there's a wee bit of that above it. You could go and just add to your mask, so click on the mask on the camera layer and just use your paintbrush to just mask out. Oh, that's maybe a bit fuzzy. Hide that layer so it's easier to see. So you can change the hardness of the brush. And I'm just going to go in and paint in more of a mask. There. And maybe, I don't know, here. Why are you showing black? I'll put that back on. Alright, I need to mask out the shadow part as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add layer mask. And I'm just going to paint in. You need to be a bit more subtle about this. But you could go in and basically use the same techniques to just cut out parts of the image to hide behind there. But the whole point of this is just to get used to adding these different